Good evening, everybody. System Chalk here with the 135th episode of The Artist, our first playthrough through Book of Hours on YouTube. I've gotten a coffee and a conversation with a long-suffering barista at the coffee shop that's near where I live, and I'm feeling a little more refreshed. Of course, all of these will be much more relevant for the forthcoming DLC House of Light, given that there's going to be sort of hosting and cooking. I believe it will finally be cake time, but we will save that for a future episode. I am actually, so there's what I will mention a couple things about the idea of House of Light, because there's as with most things in the Secret History setting, I am quite excited. I'm quite excited by it, but it also is one of these things where there's just enough sort of threads and extra layers that you can sort of pick up on as you play it. So I believe the Lighthouse Institute was first mentioned. It may have been something that sort of existed in the setting, sort of in the background, because I think it is fair to say there are things that were not in Cultist Simulator that were intended as part of the setting. The first version of Cultist Simulator, I mean. And certainly there are things that probably gained relevance to us after certain things were released. So what I'm specifically thinking of would be The Exile. Now, The Exile, I believe, was made while Book of Hours was being made. But there is specifically a reference to Brandkrug and, in fact, the Sweet Bones in The Exile, which I think most people have picked up on, but if you haven't, it gives you another reason to pick up the Exile again. But anyway, so as far as I can tell, the first mention I saw of the Lighthouse Institute was actually the live event, which is not made by Weather Factory. It is made by a separate company called Tricuspid Limited. Still a wonderful event, though. And I do believe, I believe that Weather Factory did some writing for it. And I know there's actually a couple of other very good writers who worked on that as well. So the quality is certainly there. But in any case, that was the first mention I had seen of the Lighthouse Institute. And, its sort of status is kind of like an occult think tank, better at, producing policy papers rather than maybe bringing about specific change. There's already a few things that you can get out of that, where they stand on issues, what their priorities are, a little bit more about sort of preserving the current state of things. Now, House of Light seems to be, about the founding of that institute, and specifically in anticipation of a forthcoming war, which, I think is, first of all, hinted at the very beginning of this game, but also, again, depending on the endings that you've seen for Exile, I think has been sort of mentioned more than a few times. But the other thing about it is that, there's the idea of, light and lantern and so on and so forth. But of course, lighthouses are referred to in the game a few times. And most importantly, you have Alexandria, clearly a very important place in the setting, and of course an important place in history in general. And so, when you see references to lighthouses, there's the Lighthouse Institute, there's the ideas sort of behind that, in the institute itself, but also just kind of, once you start thinking about it, once you even just specifically start thinking about lighthouses and all of the other things that are present in Cultist Simulator and Book of Hours, and I haven't played Lady Afterwards, so I'm sure that there are other references there as well. But, all of a sudden you start unpacking a few other factors that might be at play, which don't come up. And again, you still get to cook and host and all of these things. So I'm probably exactly the sort of person who's expected to get excited about these things, but I am genuinely excited by what's going to be coming up. But we are playing the game as it currently is, with the ESIN update, so in 30 seconds we will see what's behind this. I'm curious to see if anybody had any guesses in terms of the shrine. And what else are we going to do? I think we're just going to let time run. No, hang on. Surgeries and exsanguinations. I was going to start making some choices about where everything went. So the good news is we just need 2 memories. The bad news is I don't have heart or knock. So my best bet is still probably to rely on Mrs. Kill for the next little while. In fact, I think the way I'm going to handle this is I'm going to let the Sweet Bones do its usual thing. We'll see where we stand at the end of the day. I do have a few things like the Curious Hunch that I can press into service if it comes down to that. But right now I'm going to sit on my Metal and Whist, and we'll let the day decide what the next few steps are. We basically have 1 more refresh for Elements of the Soul, I think. And here it is. The Chapel Asite. The Horned Axe says, "Never speak of this mystery. When the Thunderskin was mortal, he served the hours who slew my kind. I required the Thunderskin's death, and so the Grail gave him up. There is always a reckoning, and nothing is truly forgiven." So, we've got a granite slab, long cold volcano blood, a serpentinite slab, the grey-green root rock of the Cornish coast, a cat of depths, a votive offering to the Horned Axe. We have the Asite altar itself. The Horned Axe, who opens the way and keeps the threshold, is accounted the last of the gods from stone. We have the Owl of Spirals, an ancient bird for an ancient place. So these just count as things. These are not inputs for most things that I need. There are a couple of times where you can use things, but in general, thing is a very broad description. And we have got 4 uncatalogued Dawn books, which, I'll probably deal with tomorrow. I don't think we'll have too much to handle in terms of skills. As far as rooms that we've unlocked, the Honeyed Forbidding. The air is thick with the scents of honey and yewberries, enough to daze the heart and mind. Now, this is an interesting one because of the heart and the nectar. So I'm actually going to take a minute here and take some notes. I think I had one for heart before. But I've been using this notepad for other things. Okay, we do. So we went up to 12 heart last time. That tells me it's probably worth it to sit down and write this out. So if we go for Mrs. Kill, which I think makes sense here, we start with 1 heart. So then we can get 2 from the core. From there, I guess really it comes down to a storm. So that brings us up to 1, 3, 7. And then we do have the bowls. So that brings me up to 8. So those are sort of the renewables. After which I think our best option was Ruby-Wise Ruin, which only gave me 2 heart. Yeah. So that brings me up to 10, then 2 from Ham, which brings me up to 12. But what we're looking for is 14. Now, there is a version of this which says, well, we've got an Orchard Keeper coming up in the autumn. Is there perhaps another way of making this work? The challenge here is that the Hive's Lament... Well, hang on. Let's not count that out so quick. So Orchard Keeper 1. So Heart would only give us the 1. So we're actually down 1. We can still give a tool for 1, so that's 1, 2, 3. Hive's Lament is 4, so that brings us up to 7. At which point I would need... Okay, actually, so there is potentially another path through this. So the Sacrament Malachite gives me 6 to work with, which brings me up to 13. At which point, 1 from anything, 1 food, so let's say grapes. Gives me the 14 that I need. Okay. So we have kind of the shape of something to work with here. I'm not entirely sure this is the most important thing I can be doing with my with my time right now, but it's an option. I don't want to catalog any of these books. I think getting surgeries and exsanguinations taken care of first is my higher priority. But I do have a pretty clear idea of how I'm going to spend the rest of the session. Okay, so rest and refreshment in summer. We're getting our core back. This is going to be a little tricky. So the Sacramentacite, in the name of the 2 blades that are one of the threshold which has 2 sides. I think I'm just going to relax a little bit on the actions. More gossip. Another cranial tchotchke. We all of us come to this condition in the end, but not all of us are fortunate enough to be lovingly buffed and fixed carefully to a stylish wooden stand. Where do I want to keep this? Okay. And better now. So, let's say for now we've got the core and 1 element of the soul to get surgeries and exsanguinations up. Now that's I'm going to be very sad if it comes down to that. But let's take a minute here and imagine, let's say the absolute best possible outcome comes up, and that Mrs. Kill gives us, let's say, a stolen secret, just for the sake of the argument. So what happens there? Well, we would use this core with the memory storm. From there, let's say that I want to bring back let's say I want to use this core to bring back another, actually, you know what? Okay, so I was thinking of this one way, and then I think I'm going to go somewhere else with this. So I can bring back another core here. That's going to give me 4 to work with in total. However, this core is not going to... This would be used to level up surgeries and exsanguinations. I am going to do it. But it's because what I can do next, let's say all of this just completely blows it, right? That there's no memories that I'm going to be able to use to level up surgeries and exsanguinations. It was just a complete write-off in terms of getting skills taken care of. What I can still do is I can use all 4 of these elements of the soul to catalog these Dawn period books. Now, my expectation is that we'll at least be able to get one of these. And in fact, I probably would even press one of the elements of the soul into service to that end. But let's take a look at what we've got before we make any of those choices. I mean, surely we can get like a solace or something. There it is in Cabino Tizzer. Mrs. Kill, as every local gossip knows, came from France to marry Mr. Kill, but there's scant trace of the continent in her accent now. So I'm gonna hold the line, because again, there's nothing that I really lose in the position that I have right now. I can put the storm into the Violet Chamber, so I can rest on that. If I want to bring in elements of the soul from, like, by reading, I kind of need to make this decision within the next 15 seconds or so. But we can do that with Mrs. Kill, right? So here we've got Memory Fear. This could be useful in some cases, but right now, it's it's a this is arguably one of the better positions I can find myself in, simply because I have a use for all of these elements of the soul. Now, I mean, again, maybe I wouldn't want to spend the money to restore these elements of the soul, but overall, I'm getting something out of these elements of the soul no matter what. And it's just really a question in terms of what the ordering of the day is going to look like. There's the stolen secret. It's actually the very specific example that I gave before. So let's play chicken with the time of day. In fact, we might as well move this up to position 4, just to save myself the trouble in future. So we'll take that core, the lesson, the storm and stolen secret. So my understanding is it should only take 30 seconds to catalog a book. Actually, the more I think of this, so what exactly am I getting? Like, let's say for the sake of the argument that Mrs. Kill does actually give me a memory that I need. What possible use do I have for it with this metal and whist? Because I would need the minute to read the books anyway. So no, we're going to catalog the books. No matter what. Okay, so now there is the danger that we afflict the elements of the soul, but you can't, like, you're a librarian, of course you're cataloging them. So this book was probably written around the time of Hush House's dawn period, sometime before the end of the first millennium, commonly reckoned. If I examine it, I can learn more about what knowledge it might contain. So we'll go to the pale desk to look at the other. For some reason, I keep thinking that this is a desk that I can write at, but it isn't. And then finally metal, so we'll use Ambrose's desk for that. Yeah, so this is a little different from how I would catalog before, just because there wasn't a penalty to checking a book with an affliction. Now that is something that will potentially cost you. So in this case, it's equally bad, but I could at least preserve the time. And then if I wind up with a whole bunch of curses, too bad, I'll work through it. So the skill is now level 3. Its power aspects have also increased. Surgery entails the flow of blood, and the flow of blood entails purification, but the door also opens the other way. There it is in Cabino Tizzer. Mrs. Kill, as every local gossip knows, came from France to marry Mr. Kill, but there's scant trace of the continent in her accent now. So the funny thing is that this actually could have been used with the other two elements of the soul. If I had decided to try and bring something with heart, I could have actually used that to level it up. But I still have something that I can rest on. So it was originally going to be the gossip, but the satisfaction is more valuable to me. So dream on a memory. Now that night has fallen, I can rest and perhaps dream on the day's doings. Which puts us one... Basically, we just need 2 more memories to be able to get surgeries and exsanguinations leveled up. Now I have an idea of this book's nature and its contents. So this is a manual for departure. The author, who identifies itself as the Jekadu, claims to be one of the great hooded princes of the land of the river. The style is informal, even chatty. Although, again, I should probably just leave these for when I actually read them. Right. The Sky of the Soul. That one I suspect we should be able to read. And the Book of Maya. We probably would be able to read that if we could read Hyksos. Okay, so one element of the soul to catalog the remaining Dawn book. I think I'm probably going to hold off on opening rooms until I've cleared out my existing catalog, because we have a lot, and I don't want to... Like, essentially, one thing that's happening here is I'm actually making life harder for myself by not investigating these things. So I'm going to get a couple of less popular but still valuable tasks out of the way. So one thing I'm going to do is finally read On Matthias and Amethyst Imago Lost. That is kind of burning an element of the soul, but it's not, I mean, it's not like I personally become exhausted by doing these things. So this will just help me catalog. I'm going to wait on the surgeries and exsanguinations, but we are going to bring in Mrs. Kill. Mrs. Kill's mood... Sorry. Mrs. Kill stands ready to help. You always cheer me up, she says morosely. Okay, we are going to work on surgeries and exsanguinations, but I also want to replenish my memories. So one thing I can do is I can... I'm just trying to think. I would expect that I probably am going to need inescapable confinement before I'm going to need the sun's weaknesses. Or possibly sun's weakness. The moth is helpful. But I think I'm going to need the scale more. Okay. I'll use a tryst to catalog the remaining Dawn period book. And I think I'm going to finally... make my beloved Yugal brew a dark and persistent ink. Okay, so let me take a minute here. I've got... So what I'm trying to think about is, like, what is the most sensible way for me to attack the pile of books that I need to read. So with pyroglyphics, I could kind of go for the low-hanging fruit. We've got Inks of Revelation, so combine that with this. Yeah, so this is like a piece of cake for me to read, and then I don't need to leave things to chance. It would involve pyroglyphics. Has quite a few memories. Okay, here's how I'm going to handle this. Let's go to Caller's desk. So we'll take The Sky of the Soul. We will read that with Inks of Revelation and the Snoodle Jar? Yes. Useful for calcination, purification, alteration, and valuable for snoodlery. I can master this mystery. Now, pyroglyphics is a lantern and forge, so I could leave aside metal. But what I also want to do is Maybe I'll get another Glassfinger toxin back, but I'm going to do it in a slightly unconventional way. I'm actually going to make the I'm going to make the amethyst first. I just need to remember how I can do that. Let's start with anything with knock. Okay. Edict's Liminal, I suspect, doesn't, yeah. Maybe glass flowing? Yeah, there's the amethyst ampule. And, okay, so the nice thing about glass flowing and vessel crafting is that I can kind of use any element of the soul with it, a little bit like the Rites of the Roots. So, we'll start there. And, oh, actually, there's one other thing that I should do, and I should be using help with letters. I could offer help with correspondence and arithmetic. There's no school in Brandkrug, and not everyone here knows their letters. So that we're just going to cycle through as usual. The surgeries and exsanguinations doesn't do that much for me for any of my current ambitions. What I am going to do is talk with Mrs. Kill to generate a nice supply of memories. Mrs. Kill has seen more of the world than she usually lets on. Conversations with her yield the occasional surprise. Alright, I've carried a memory like a flambeau safe through the mazes of night. Now, my expectation is that we should be able to just naturally get the memories that we need for surgeries and exsanguinations. If we don't, that's a shame, but we have... Oh yeah, I'll set aside one of these over here. So I see this as kind of two free elements of the soul right now. Here we go. Alright, so I am now despairing. Melancholy is the mist on the soul's waters. Despair is the wolf that prowls at the water's edge. A chilly nimbus numbs my hands. A theoplasmic contamination. Your tryst and this item are contaminated. So, Chionic Theoplasma. This book has suffered the attention of one of the chilly names or hours, perhaps even a god from nowhere. This contamination can affect your tryst and health and spread to nearby objects. You can remove it with a skill that is effective against theoplasmic contamination and at least 7 heart. This is unfortunate, but I don't think this is going to be a deal breaker for us. So I am going to need to put together 5 sky to restore myself. So let's maybe start... Now, the part that gets tricky here is finding something that is good against Chionic Theoplasma. I don't even know where to start looking. Oh, Quenchings and Quellings is... Okay, Quenchings and Quellings makes this trivial. Okay, good. Nona's desk will help us out here. So I was originally thinking that maybe I needed to get a storm, but it's not that tricky. Ooh, Fusine. Nuts! Well, okay, no, I see what's going on here, actually. It's just asking for an element of the soul. So if I added my right, because I don't have the edge. I wonder if there's a heart and an edge desk, though. You know what? I don't need to get that clever about it. Attenuate Chionic Theoplasma, the DeWolf method. Some credit it to Gideon, others to Ava. Now, do I want to deal with my despairing tryst right away? I actually think there might be a little sense in... I actually can see myself making a bunch of amethyst ampules basically for free. So I will deal with my despair, but we're going to use my despair productively. Okay, there it is in Gambino Tizzer. Mrs. Kill, as every local gossip knows, came from France to marry Mr. Kill, but their scant trace of the continent in her accent now. So yeah, I know where we're going with this. So we're already getting rid of the curse. We're going to hang on to the despair for production. Excuse me. I'm eventually going to want to get some more water so that I can kind of bring myself back. The one question is actually going to be, so we have the violet chamber. I could use any old drink. That's not really a problem. But what I need to do here is find something with sky that also has... Okay, actually it does take moth, so Sacrolemea will be sufficient. So in this case here, it's pretty straightforward to... and then, we need a drink. But again, I can actually make use of the tryst. So I will for a little while. I'm feeling a little more doubtful about my ability to level up hieroglyphics. We'll see. But we should have surgeries and exsanguinations by the end of today. Anyways, all of that will be dealt with on Friday's episode. Thank you very much for watching, and we'll see you in the next one.